the CRA. I think, again, for the community banks, participating in the Small Business Loan Guarantee Program and the other programs with iBank Small Business Finance Center is easier for them to get CRA credit doing that, going that route. Also, it's part of their community because they want to do it anyway, right? The larger banks, they have other ways of getting that credit without getting CRA credit. They can give grants and donations and to get that credit. And so that's an easier avenue for them. We've always wondered whether or not some of the credit that they get is appropriate. There's been public comment about whether or not certain larger financial institutions' credit is appropriate. But our battle right now is with the community, not a battle, our opportunity, rather, is with the community banks because they're more likely to want to help the folks. They know the people, they're their neighbors who want to participate in the program. What we're doing is getting the program to a position financially that they can, in good conscience and in a prudent and sound manner, agree to participate in the program. And I think that's where the program is today, which is why we've, more than 2.5 times more lenders in the program. I think the other opportunity for the larger banks is with the export program because they have more export programs. So if we were to participate in their loans so that they are taking less of the risks in those export loans, which are riskier generally than a traditional commercial loan, that's a way we can hopefully bring them into the fold in dealing with the Small Business Finance Center at iBank and hopefully from there expand.
And maybe I could just add, a comment on information gathering dissemination, which is one of the focus areas for our office, but it's actually one of the most complex areas. Tools like the California Business Portal are now just one piece because you have communities, small business communities that still will never go to a website or, use social media tools that are very different from other groups. And so figuring out how do you connect with the people where they are can be very challenging. It's one of the values of working with the SBDC program because a lot of the work they do is on the ground. And so they go to the business owners and they connect with them directly. But we try to be everywhere we can, so holding forums with members, doing radio shows when we can, holding our own webinars and we try every single avenue that we can just to try to reach those pockets. And there is tremendous value working with the chambers because they can also provide that kind of focus point, saying this is where you need to be in this community. This is the part that maybe you're not seeing just yet, and there's tremendous value working with the partners on that. So so it is challenging because you have groups that reaching them and finding the right champions can be very challenging sometimes. But I think we do, our best effort to try to connect with the various different stakeholders across the state.
Thank you very much. We've heard a really good conversation take place as it relates to outreach, measuring outcomes, very specific efforts in economically distressed areas of the state, addressing the income inequality gaps that continue to grow. I'm going to pose a question because I think that's what stands out the most to me. And, I'd like to perhaps to our director see what do we see GoBiz's role in addressing the growing disparities, income disparities in California. Based on what we've heard today as it relates to banks, and I know that in our district we're going to round up our banks and inform them, educate them of the benefits of some of the state programs that we have. We've done a significant amount of outreach, and I appreciate both the iBank as well as the GoBiz programs, whether it be the Competes program. For me, more interested about, so what are the outcomes of those outreach efforts? And I know that we've got some great data that was provided to us, but making sure that we have a consistent way of measuring that is extremely important to me. But to the question, and what I'd like to do is maybe let us sit on the question a little bit in terms of what GoBiz's role is addressing the income inequality gaps that continue to grow based on the programs that we've talked about today. Before we get to the question, I would like to allow for a minute for each one of the last panelists to introduce themselves, talk a little bit about what their programs look like. I know a minute isn't a lot of time, but I think based on the conversations, I think it may add some value to what we've heard today. So I'd like to welcome Carl Zalkowski with the Coastal Rural Development Corporation, just to say a few words, and then followed by Mark Robertson, and then perhaps our director can kind of address the question of what we've heard today and the role that GoBiz can, should, or needs to play in addressing the growing economic income gaps that are growing. And they happen to be, right, the correlation between the communities of color. We're talking about chambers of commerce and the outreach efforts that they play. And so, but we'll go to our two comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and members of the committee for allowing us to speak with you today and have a conversation about what we do. My colleagues here, Mr. Casio and Mr. Robertson, we're the people where the rubber meets the road in dealing with the small business individuals. And each of us has our own area, geographic area. Cal Coastal covers basically from Ventura County in the south, up the coastal communities, up to Santa Cruz and San Benito County. Essentially a very rural community by and large. And I'm hearing the conversations about the banks and whatnot. I did a study for myself. In 2005, we had 26 local independent banks in our service area. Because of mergers, acquisitions, closures, the recession, I'm facing 12 today. And of those 12, maybe 7 use the loan guarantee program. So there's been a dynamic shift over the last few years. I, as an FDC, have a variety of tools available to me, and we do reach out to the underserved communities. To some extent, the regulatory environment for commercial banks and the underwriting standards that they have had to implement may have precluded the ability to outreach to underserved communities. That could be a potential. But let me tell you a little bit about what Cal Coastal has done. We have an awful lot of Latino farmers in our area. Through the ability to do direct loans, we service primarily the Latino strawberry farmers along the Central Coast. We reach out to them. We have done, since the turn of the century, we've done probably about 2,300 loans combined with the loan guarantee program, our direct lending program, our farm loan program, to the tune of about $432 million. We estimate that we've probably reached about 60,000 different jobs. We are in a unique area. In the downturn of the economy, when the loan guarantee program was paused, a nice way of putting it, I have personally had a hard time going back to my bankers and saying, this is our program. Come back. We can do this. We can reach out to you. I have my staff members reach out to the community. We go to the Chamber of Commerce's. We go to the things in the evening. We reach out. We reach out to the farming community in Santa Maria, in San Luis Obispo, and in Watsonville. And we've tried to reach out to the underserved community. That's how we've done it at Cal Coastal. And each of us has our own way of dealing with our community. As the information that you've been given says, California is composed of many economies. What's on the Central Coast, what may be in Ventura is different than what's in Santa Barbara, which is different than what's in Santa Cruz. But we, as the FDCs, as I say, are the rubber that meets the road. We know our communities. We know the pluses and the minuses of them. We've dealt with the pause in the loan guarantee program. But as an ex-banker and as an ex-CFO of a bank, I will tell you, since this program has been transferred to GoBiz, specifically to Ms. Barnes' area, the professionalism of the staff, the support of the staff, has given us the impetus to continue and to go on. You have no clue, I don't think, as to how badly this program almost ceased to exist. And the fact that we are able to be here today, we may have some other work to do, and we are doing it. But we've come a long way from July 10th, 2009.
All right. Thank you.
Okay.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and committee members. My name is Mark Robertson, Sr., President of Pacific Coast Regional Small Business Development Corporation in Los Angeles, where since 1977 we have carried out the mission of providing financial and educational assistance to underserved small businesses and communities. The financial assistance has primarily and historically come through the state loan guarantee program. Assemblymember Gibson, last fiscal year, PCR issued some $14 million in guarantees in support of just about $20 million in loans. 70% of those loans were in low to moderate income areas. And I should say, too, that PCR is in the process now of opening a branch in the city of Compton to make sure that all of our services are spread throughout low to moderate income areas. Other financial assistance is provided through 3 direct loan programs that we administer. And Assemblymember Brown, this will, I think, get to your question about what banks are doing with regards to CRA. PCR, our company is an SBA certified 7A lender, which means that we can make a direct loan and receive an SBA guarantee on it of up to 85%. Well, banks, as Ms. Barnes mentioned, will use other vehicles to meet CRA requirements. PCR has been successful in the last year of raising $3.5 million through the California Organized Investment Network, COIN, as investments from banks to support our direct lending activities. In addition to that, we have a $500,000 grant from Comerica Bank that allows us to make loans as small as $5,000 and up to $25,000. And then finally, we have a $3.3 million grant from the Economic Development Administration. That's a federal grant. In fact, Assemblymember Gibson, we were asked to assume responsibility for the EDA grant for the city of Compton. And that is one of the guiding lights to us, for us to opening up a branch in Compton to make sure that those funds are used in Compton. The educational services that we provide are offered through our standing since 2007 as a small business development center under the guise of the watchful eye of the SBA. And again, Assemblymember Brown, we provide these services in Los Angeles County, and I should say that there is a member of our network, an SBDC in the city of Pasadena. And despite the fact that PCR was providing SBDC services in the city of Pasadena, it was the U.S. representative, I think Judy Chu, who made sure. She recognized that we were there, but she wanted an SBDC in her area. So it started at the federal level, since this is a federal program. So I would just make that suggestion in partnering with the federal representative in your area. So both financial, educational services, and I think PCR is not alone in bringing other resources to this program. I think all of the FDCs work in doing that. All of us are community development, most of us are community development financial institutions, which is a designation given to us by the U.S. Treasury, but all of us work very hard at bringing additional resources for the benefit and to work in conjunction with the State Loan Guarantee Program and iBank's programs. And Assemblymember Kim, with regards to outreach, one very small thing that we do is almost on a weekly basis, but at the very least every other week, our SBDC has an orientation where we invite businesses in, and we usually have about 20 to attend. We're located in Koreatown, by the way. And those businesses are oriented with regards to our SBDC services, but all of the products and services that we have to offer. So just a little bit of proactive outreach. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We have had a really good conversation here, and there have been some very important introductions made. We've highlighted some of the good work that's happening under the leadership of GoBiz's umbrella. And we've also heard from our members as well as stakeholders where there could be some room for growth, improvement, and some very targeted investments, whether it be outreach or, literally the investments that we need to turn the economic disparity challenges that we see in parts of California, turn those around. And so what I'd like to do is perhaps just end it with our stakeholders to just, in a 30-second minute closing comment, anything you'd like to address that was mentioned or not, and then we will close with our director in terms of the question that I posed as it relates to GoBiz's role in addressing the economic disparity gap in California. And then we'll move on to our next panels. We have 1 hour to go through 2 panels, and my goal is to hear from both of those panels as well. So our stakeholders, very quickly, and then we'll go to our director.
Again, Aubrey Stone, Black Chamber. I just want to say I communicate with Jesse in the DGS meetings, but I'm sure from this point on we'll have serious engagement. So I thank you for the opportunity to the staff to ensure that the California Black Chamber was included, and I'm sure we'll probably be kept in the loop from now on. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
I'd just like to say, again, that we appreciate the investment from the state of California through GoBiz for the Capital Access Program, and we would like the legislature to think about possibly increasing that, as it is a program that has provided a really good return on investment. Thank you.
And I just want to repeat what Kristen said as well. We have tools within GoBiz and the iBank that have worked, that have proven effective. We need to put our collective, I guess you could say, weight or advocacy or voice behind getting them to serve the low-wealth communities in a more creative and active way, and really recognize who's starting the businesses. So I appreciate the comments that you made, and certainly Cameo would like to work with you to get that to happen, to leverage that.
All right. Thank you very much again to everyone, our stakeholders. Director Advies, closing comments, perhaps starting off with our question. GoBiz's role in addressing some of the economic disparities we see in California, in parts of California.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you again for the opportunity. I know you've heard from a few of my colleagues here today on a few of the activities we're undergoing in order to address those needs. And what Carl said is absolutely correct in that they are the rubber, where the rubber meets the road. We heavily rely on organizations like these financial development corporations, to the cities, to the counties, to our economic development partners that are here in the audience today, in really understanding, as Gerbach's coined in the hearing on the fabric of your community, right? And really understanding what those challenges are, because they are very different in each one of your respective districts. And so I'm looking forward to the opportunity of having the rest of my colleagues come up here and really talk about some of the activities that they've been undergoing in these areas to address some of those concerns.
Thank you. In terms of what you see, based on the comments that we've heard today, should there be a greater role that GoBiz and its programs plays with far more specific efforts to address the income inequality gaps that we see increasingly growing, right, in California?
Yeah, I definitely see the skills gaps playing a very big role in that, and we continue to be very part of that conversation. And I think that it is important to continue a lot of the partnerships that we've established, and even working more closely with all of you in better understanding what those specific challenges are and how can we be addressing their needs, and what does GoBiz has in our abilities to be able to do.
But when we're talking about very specific resources, the tax credit, programs, the infrastructure investments, I mean, those that have actual monetary benefits, should we be looking at very specific, without looking at set-asides or looking at a category that looks at disadvantaged community allocations? Should we be considering those types of approaches in the interest and benefit of turning around the economic circumstances of specific communities in California?
I think we should absolutely be evaluating the incentives that are currently out there, just as what came out of the governor's economic development initiative. One is specific to new employees, right, that are being hired, but it's operated obviously out of the franchise tax board, not out of GoBiz. But it's really looking at what's working, what's not working, and what may be working for one community won't work for another. So, I mean, there's not, and obviously you know this, is no one size fits all, and so how can we really have the most impact with the current programs?
And so I think for me, and we hear from other members, I think it's looking at communities where levels of poverty continue to rise, levels of unemployment have either been the same in my district, 21% unemployment, in other places of Inland Empire or Central California, double digits beyond 12, 13. So, where things are working, without a doubt, we don't want to tamper with the program and the formulas, but looking at the economically disadvantaged communities with a special, set of eyes and assertive attention, I think is something that I am open to exploring when it comes to economic development in California. As the lead agency for these efforts, I would like for us to seriously consider, what options may be out there to try to turn around those circumstances. So,
if I may, Mark brought up a really good point that I didn't bring up, how important technical assistance is, right, that Cameo provides, that the FDCs provide, that the SBDCs provide. I think that is the crux of really what's going to help us get through this.
I know Ms. Brown wants to make some closing comments, and then we will move on to our next panel. Again, I want to thank you all for participating in this very important discussion that I think has an impact in every corner of our state, whether unemployment is low, high. Nevertheless, we're talking about one California filled with opportunities for economic prosperity. So thank you again. Ms. Brown?
Yes. It's more on what you were just speaking about in talking about incentives. There's some areas of our state that have so many jobs that they talk about, we don't have housing for all these people. I've always said, I have a lot of space to grow in our area. So is there a way that we can look at incentives, that we can say to these companies that really need the space to grow, that, here's an area where you might want to put your plant. Here's an area where you might want to do some business because the pressures are different. I just think that there's something that we're not doing, or something that we could do better to make our whole state come online and be what we could be.
I think you're right that there are several places throughout the state that are definitely untapped, places where businesses can grow and really have competitive pricing for property and labor and whatnot. I think it's important to really highlight the vital role that your local economic development corporations really play in working with us and properly really getting the word out what the workforce training needs are in your community, or what are your workforce skill sets. Who can you market to? What are your existing larger companies that are there? How do you grow your supply chain there? I mean, these are conversations that are happening on a daily basis with many of the people here in the room today. And it's very important that we continue to build upon the conversations we have and those relationships. And I encourage you, Assemblymember Brown, to engage us and get more involved in our conversations with your locals of how we can do specific activities in your community.
Thank you very much.
This is all good. This has been Mr. Ashajan. Now, Assemblymember Ashajan wants to chime in as we close up this panel.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for your leadership bringing this information forward. I'm very appreciative of you folks as organizers and movers and the shakers of this program, and glad to hear from the stakeholders. But if it's the coastal or Small Business Administration, we still have to go through the bank. And I think somewhere in this information hearing, we need to hear from them as well, as what are their difficulties we need to deal with, because I think for your efforts to connect, it's the bank, and they're not here. I would like to hear from them as what are their difficulties, how they can help us help you or help our clients or businesses that exist in our areas. So I think it's worth the effort to bring them as a panelist in the future. Thank you.
I agree. Thank you. Assemblymember Chow.
Thank you very much. I just want to make a brief comment that about 2 weeks ago, I had the opportunity to convene a workshop for small business owners in my district, where we had the privilege of having Deputy Director Torres being one of the speakers. The intent of the workshop was to help small business owners to understand how to navigate the difficulties and challenges in the area. And Mr. Torres talked about the different programs that GoBiz offers. And let me say that the audience there find it very helpful. And we had a nice turnout. We had about 70 people, small business owners, showing up. And so I want to say thank you for sharing the information. Thank you for traveling down there. It's very helpful to have somebody from GoBiz to actually talk with small business owners. And I know you touched on the outreach effort also a little bit. And one of the things that I found out was that many of the small business owners in my district, particularly, didn't know about the GoBiz and some of the programs that you operate. So I look forward to working with your office in getting the word out there, and so that more business owners will take advantage of the different programs. So thank you again. I want to the audience thank you, and my district want to thank you. Thank you.